Aldo Matze here. Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My guest on this episode is drummer Rick Latham. He has not only published two of the most important books on groove and funk drumming, but he has also performed over his career with great artists such as Edgar Winter, Juice Newton, Chuck Rainey, Dave Samuels, Pat Travers, and many, many more over his long career. He's also a clinician and performing all over the world with his own group. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you may receive notice of new and upcoming episodes. Thank you. Rick Latham. Hello, Rick. Thank you so much for joining me on Shaping Your Journey, this podcast. It's
great to see
wonderful.
you,
Wonderful to have you on. Before we talk about like shaping your journey and, all of those things, all those decisions we've made all along that brought us where we are. Take us to your beginning. What started it for you? What was that spark that got this fire going for you?
Yeah, well, for me, man, it was really seeing Buddy Rich, on TV. I mean, I was playing in high school band and junior high school band, playing snare drum and marching band and stuff. And it's funny, I started that in junior high school, but I would always for some reason just liked kind of R&B kind of stuff growing up in the South. So seeing Buddy, this was on Johnny Carson, when he would be on Johnny Carson. My parents would let me stay up late and watch Johnny Carson, and that's what it was, man. That's what it was.
And Johnny Carson was a drummer, so they had this thing. I remember
exactly.
Yeah.
And I would see Ed Shaughnessy and Colin Bailey and those. Colin played sometimes for Ed, and different guys, man, on TV playing drums. And I just thought it was cool. And, I was in band doing that. And I don't know how I picked drums to start with. I just wanted to do that. My brother was in the band. He's 4 years older than me. And he was in the marching band and high school band, played tuba. But I played piano. I had little piano lessons a little bit when I was a little younger. And that was, I got my first drum set when I was 12. Okay. So, that's when it really started. But I had played piano a little bit, taken some piano lessons. So I play piano still a little bit. I write on the piano and stuff. So, my parents listened to a lot of music. They listened to, they had big band stuff and things like that going around in the house. And they would listen to stuff like that, Woody Herman and, Count Basie and, Bert Kempfert and, all these kind of people. And, I just drummers, when I was 12, I also saw, that was right after I got my first drum set, but I saw Joe Morello do a clinic when I was 12 years old, man, and then play a concert with the Brubeck Quartet that same day.
Wow.
Brubeck was one of the first guys to do clinics like in schools and stuff to kind of spread the word of jazz and stuff. And man, that was a great experience. That was I saw Joe do the clinic and then play with the original Dave Brubeck Quartet, man, the same day.
Wow.
So and I went backstage and met Joe and went across the street and got him a cup of coffee. And, I was a kid that, I loved, when I was little, I loved doing stuff like that. I would kind of sneak into back doors of places. And, after that, that was the first instance of meeting somebody like that, and, I knew who he was from Take Five and stuff. I had heard that.
Right. Yeah.
So man, that's kind of what started it,
And Joe was such an amazing person. We had him at COSA a couple of times, at the COSA.
Oh, yeah,
camps.
okay.
Yes, and he was just so giving, so amazing. And I learned, of course, that he had originally been a violinist.
Right.
So which made sense because when he played, he was like playing notes. I mean, he was playing music, right? And
well, that's interesting, man, that you say that, because I didn't know that actually. And to me, man, it's like, when I play too, it's not really about. It's more melodic. I think more melodic, especially with the linear kind of
Yes.
drumming. That was came to be popular when I wrote my book. Back in the '80s. But that whole style, of that linear playing, but playing with a groove, a great feel, but sounds, moving
Ah,
around the drum set was a
yeah.
lot more interesting than just, for me. And
Yes.
that's what was so great about Buddy. I mean, he, phrasing, stuff like that
Wow.
is,
Yeah.
musical things that you learn being in a concert band and orchestra and stuff like that. So that
Yes.
had a big influence on me for sure.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you said that, Rick, because recently, I mean, I would do this instinctively when I'm teaching and when I'm playing. And so I'm going to say two things. Ringo
Uh,
Starr and what made him absolutely one of the greatest ever. Well, he was playing music. He didn't really pay attention to the drums, really. He was
right.
playing songs. They say, I played to the song. Well, what does that mean? He's playing melodies. He's not really concerned about the technical stuff. In fact, he even says it himself. He used to hate practicing it. But it was really about the music. And then on another side, for myself,
Mhm.
anybody I know who had studied, you yourself, you did piano, those of us who had musical training, things really change. I mean, I've had conversations with many people about that, and
Oh,
I
sure.
saw it. Yeah,
Exactly, man. Going to school, and studying music later, that made me even more aware of playing marimba and playing timpani and
yeah,
playing musically. Not just drums, but
right.
playing music and playing great literature and learning about different players and orchestras and high fits and people great musicians.
Sure.
So this is I saw Itzhak Perlman at my undergraduate school, and
Nice.
talked to him about music a little bit, and stuff like that. It made a big impression on me,
Yeah,
really, and having great teachers that
yeah.
taught you those kind of things too. You know, not all about drums and hitting the drum and stuff. Excuse me, technique, but phrasing, music, play musically,
Yeah. No, no.
So
I'm
yeah,
glad.
it's interesting, man. That you definitely can tell. I think players that have that
Oh,
background.
listen to Harvey Mason, Steve Gadd, all of
Yeah,
those guys. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly, man.
oh, anyone, and you can tell. And I remember when I was studying percussion, I got my degree. Just we all went to college, university to study, and
Sure.
those people who really banged our on our heads the idea of melody, the idea of good tone, good sound.
Good sound. That's something that I teach a lot, man, and a lot of drummers don't
Yes.
teach that. They teach technique, but and I have this whole thing about that, man. Don't get me started, but a lot of people, a lot of drummers, I think what I call it playing on top of the drum. They don't really get the full sound out of the drums, and a lot of people when I play and do sessions and stuff, and play live, people, man, how do you get that sound? And that again comes from guys that have studied and playing timpani and
Sure.
different multi percussion instruments, and you know, even playing a triangle, man. You got to get a good
Of
sound out of
course.
the triangle. You don't just hit it. There's a lot of ways to do that. So that's an interesting thing, man. Sound, and
Yes.
that's a big part of being a great player is having a great sound. And that comes from learning music.
Yeah, and that's super important. More important than we give it in the beginning. Later on, we start realizing it dawns on us. I remember in my first year university, my teacher, the first one I had, was the timpanist for the National Arts Center Orchestra in Ottawa
Yep.
before I moved to
Yep.
Montreal. He had me playing the first exercise of Deleclu's snare drum method for a whole year. And I'm going, like, why is he torturing me?
Yeah.
And then he would look at me at the halfway through, and he'd say, I know you feel this is torture, but listen to the sound. Listen what you, and then it dawned on me what he was talking about. And then I went on to study with Pierre Belluse, who's even a bigger maniac of sound and texture and nuance and all of that. So here's the thing, Rick. Now I say, I play, and when I'm playing, I am always thinking melody. So even people who come to study with me, I tell them in the beginning, we're not going to separate rhythm, melody. These are two separate things. No, I've made up my mind, and I will stand in court.
Yeah.
It's only melody. That's it.
Yeah.
Of course, melody, if it's just one note, well, it's not a melody.
Sure.
It has to have a part. A part, meaning it has to have a sequence or something. So that's a melody becoming rhythmic.
Sure.
But it's always melody.
Yeah.
Cymbals, drums.
That's interesting too, because in one of my classes in undergrad school, I had a great professor, man, Joe DiStefano at East Carolina University.
Yes.
And he played gigs like on the weekends and stuff. He was a great piano player, and he taught some jazz courses at the school. And I was in one of his classes, and a freshman, and it was like he had this voice, and it was, Italian guy. It's like, Mr. Latham, can you play jazz with just one note, And everybody, before he said my name, he asked the class. I raised my hand. I said, sure. I was a freshman. He thought I was being cocky. Everybody was like, I said, sure. He said, well, come up, Mr. Latham. Come up here, and so he played these chords, and I played one note, in the chord.
Beautiful.
Was just rhythmically
beautiful.
And he said, exactly, it's still, it's phrasing, it's only one note, not very melodic, but it's still got a sequence and a rhythm to it, So that was a great thing to hear from a teacher,
Sure, and I'm sure that set you straight a little bit. And we think back to those kinds of things and say, why do I play the way I do? Why I'm so happy about what I'm able to do? Because I get it. I understand, this other level.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of, especially drummers, and I'm not meaning to put anybody down, but a lot of drummers don't think like that. They just think technique and speed, and which is cool, and everybody, when we're young, we all do that. But the more you learn, the better off you're going to be. I think that's and that may sound corny, but that's that I think it's true.
Yeah, but those are principles that will always stay. And
yeah,
we're talking music, right? And music is music. It's not it's not a circus. There are sometimes really neat. Some guys, and we won't mention names, but some guys are like these machines.
Oh, sure, man. Yeah.
Fast machines, and that's really incredible to see. It's like a great trapeze act, and it's an art. It's an art form. It's great, but if you're thinking music, one has to ask the question: does that talk to me? Does that mean anything to me, or am I going to another direction? Am I playing like I'm a trombone player?
Sure.
Am I playing?
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what you just said. Does that touch me? Does that affect me? And I think that's why I was drawn more to R&B and soul and stuff when I was a little kid, because that it felt better to me, the Beatles, in the 60s, the Beatles, that's when, 67 is when I got my first drum set. So, the Beatles, all that stuff, I was not really into the Beatles that much back then. I was into like Sam and Dave and
wow,
Aretha and the Stax kind of thing, because that was from the South, and it was from Memphis, but from a different place, man. It was coming from a different place. That soul stuff was just different. I don't know why it felt that way to me, but it did. and I'm thankful it did, man. I love that stuff, and I kind of, like a, uh, black man trapped inside a white man's body or something like that. I don't know, man, but it really affected me. And
Sure.
I feel that when I play. I love playing a groove. I could play a groove for 3 hours without, you know, and that feels good.
Sure.
And it speaks to me. It changes, over that course of the 3 hours. It may change, but it would still be fun to do. I'm not that concerned if it makes somebody else feel good. That's and that was our job. That's what I learned, that a drummer's job is to make people dance, in a band.
Right.
So that's what I tried to do. So yeah,
And you
interesting.
studied at North Texas, right?
Yeah. For my master's, I was working on my master's at North Texas, and that was another thing that was the reason I was able to go to North Texas. I actually got a scholarship, like a full TA, teaching assistantship, because I had such a great background from
Right.
East Carolina. Harold Jones, man, my mentor, and I love this guy, man. He taught me so much about touch and playing, musically. It was really great. And then, and then I was able to go, and I was teaching snare drum and marimba. That's something that a lot of people don't really know. you know, and I didn't study drum set really until I went to graduate school.
Isn't that
That's
funny?
funny,
Isn't it?
and then
Yeah.
studied with Jim Hall, who actually lives here in Columbia, South Carolina. He When I left North Texas, he came here and got the job at University of South Carolina, and was here for 28 years. He's retired now. We see each other all the time. But yeah, then studied with great people at North Texas. Shatroma was there. That was
Right.
his first year. Ron Fink, Henry Oxdale, and such a great history of that school, playing with the lab bands and the symphony orchestras and all that stuff.
Right.
So that another great musical experience.
Yeah, and they've managed to keep that up. I mean, that's a great school. A lot of great people
Incredible,
came
man.
out of it.
It's really an incredible school, and it was an incredible um, situation when I was there. When I first went there, man, there were like 200 drum set majors.
Wow.
Yeah, and Shatroma's whole thing was kind of weeding that out a little bit, so guys could play a little bit more well-rounded. And there were a lot of great players there, and a lot of guys were getting what they called a jazz ed degree, so
Right.
it wasn't really a teaching degree. And I was working on a performance degree, so I didn't really think about being a teacher or anything either. I wanted to play, but yeah, what a great experience it was to be around so many great guys. You know, but we had 3 buildings of just drum set practice rooms.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it was really, and some great drummers, man, have come out of there for sure. And so that was a great experience. But I did play a lot. I played in the symphony orchestra with a great
Right.
conductor, and the wind ensemble. Was writing for the um, drum corps and stuff. That was a great thing. So, I had a lot of little duties as a grad student, but it was great, man, to do all those different things.
Beautiful. Was a gentleman called Rusty Wells.
Yeah, Rusty. I know Rusty's a very good friend of mine, man. And he and Jim are very good friends. He went to actually undergraduate school where Jim was teaching before Jim came to North Texas. So Rusty's a very good friend of mine. I
I
talk
have
to him all the time.
I have a story for you, Rick.
Yeah,
He says hello, by the way.
yeah. Okay,
But
very good.
here's the funny thing. The first drum camp I ever went to was the Ludwig Percussion Symposium back in the 70s.
Sure. I
And,
worked at some of those at East Carolina. I worked as a
okay.
gopher runner guy. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Rusty and I met in Madison, Wisconsin, at the university there one
Okay.
summer, and we've remained friends ever since. And every once in a while, he checks in, or I check in with him, and and it's interesting because when I first met him, I said, "Okay, here's this guy. He's got red hair, and his
Yeah,
name is Rusty Wells from Texas."
yeah, yeah, right. Oil wells. Yeah, yeah, there you go.
That was the funniest thing, and we've remained friends, as I said, and I know
He's a great percussionist, man. A great conga player. I've got a thing, man. We put up. He came and visited, stayed with me a couple of days. He comes to see us every once in a while. Yeah, great
yeah.
guy. But we recorded a thing with Jim, Rusty, and I in my studio here, and I'll
Nice.
I'll send it to you sometime.
Yeah. That would be nice because he called me recently about some conga drums, what I thought about this one, what that, and just kind of talking shop and bouncing ideas, and every once in a while we would do that. And now he's looking at getting a new set of congas, and he wanted to get my opinion on it, and
Yeah,
he
he
wanted to get
mentioned
my.
that to me. Isn't the guy in Canada or something that
Yes,
makes those
yes.
drums? Yeah.
There's a guy who's at one of these boutique places, and makes
Yeah,
great
that's great.
drums. Just limited, and they're expensive, but they're really good. But it's a special thing. So I told him what I thought, and he's coming in. But the interesting thing is, it's just nice to like how things come around. After all these years, people who connect, and
Yeah.
I met you, and we worked together in Italy when you were at Cosa in
Yeah.
Italy, and in China, right?
Yeah, sure.
And and then how we run across each other over these years and cross paths, and
Well,
it,
it's interesting too that I think especially talking about going to school and studying percussion. I think that's kind of a whole connecting thing too with all of us. Because
right,
we've all met at PAS or different percussion events, around the world, or like China or your COSA thing, and all these different things where people that are kind of in the know about percussion stuff, they always go to those things,
sure,
and we
yeah,
know each other from this guy knows you and he knows this guy and this guy knows me and blah blah blah. So it's an interesting thing. I think it's always true, and everybody talks about the drummers have kind of a special relationship, different than guitar players or bass
yes,
players,
yes, yes.
and I think that's true. I think that's true too, man.
Well, there's so much in our world. Wherever you are, and you had moved to Italy for a while. I remember, and I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting. Because I have a place in Italy now, so I go more often. But I said, wow, what a lucky guy. He's in Milan, and he's playing music, and he's
This was
eating.
yeah,
e-
this was beautiful, man. I still had a place in LA. We kept an apartment in LA, but I was living, I was traveling over there a lot over the years, over the last 30 years. And I kept going over there more and more. So I just thought, let me get a place and see what happens. And man, it had a great band. I still play with the guys. We just went to Poland not too long ago and played a big festival with Keith Carlock and Weckel and who else was it? Gary Husband, Dennis
Yes.
Chambers. We were all on the same festival in Poland. Great, incredible. So yeah, so you see those guys, and then you talk to just like we said, we were seeing each other somewhere. But yeah, Europe was great, man. I love it, and I hope to be back more and more. I'm starting to go again more and more. So,
Nice.
that was just last month that I was there the last time. So, I
Beautiful.
love Europe and their whole, that whole acceptance thing of music is just still different in Europe.
Yep.
They're more they love musicians, that no matter what you play, what kind of music you play, it's it's more accepted and more kind of more elevated. You're not, you're kind of a different person if you're a musician. They love it and they love talking about music and
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I love Europe, man. And your thing was great, man. And in Locri, that was fun. That was
Right.
fun.
Now in Calabria, and I'm concentrating in Calabria because I was born in Calabria, southern
Yeah,
Italy, and so
Calabrese, man. That's
yeah.
I was just, when I was there last month, man, I have a very good friend in Milan that is from Calabria. And we went to a place, man. I don't know if I don't want to talk about food too much, but I'm a
Oh
real
yes,
foodie, as
please,
everybody knows.
yes.
But man, do you know that dish, man, where they make the pasta and then cover it with the pizza crust and bake it in the oven, and you poke a hole in it and take the top off, you eat everything, and then you do the scarpetta with the crust. That is incredible, man. That no place I've ever seen that, except a Calabrese restaurant. It's great.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, but Italy in general, man, is just beautiful. I love it all.
Yeah. And the food, oh, I mean, I said, come for the drumming, because we did a retreat last year, and and we had even cooking classes. I said, you can't just be in Italy and just take drumming and dance classes. We have to do some cooking classes so you know what you're eating. And you can also, when you get back home, you may be able to make it yourself if you want to. And you know what that's about. Because, music and cooking and food and all of that, at some point, they're related.
Yeah, yeah.
We certainly know.
Yeah, right. I love it, man. I love it for sure.
I gotta say, you have taste, Rick. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, good taste. Yeah.
And over the years, I mean, we're talking about playing with other people who we were performing with. People like who was it? Winter. You played with Winter and a whole bunch of other
Winter,
people.
Yeah, Edgar's on the wall back there.
Nice. Yes, I see that in the back.
There. But yeah, that was a great experience, man. One of the best musicians I've ever worked with, man. I mean, he's an incredible. Not only can he sing and play keyboards and stuff, but it's a great sax player.
Wow.
He plays drums. He actually plays drums. He played that, the famous solo on Frankenstein. He played the timbali part, that was him. So that was always fun playing that, famous. But he had that, back and forth thing. But great. Yeah, Edgar was incredible, man. Really great.
And then guitar players like one that popped up when I was looking at who's he played with, and Pat Travers.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was like at a NAMM show or something. First time I played with Pat. That was crazy. And that BB King was like that too. The first time I played with BB at I think the last NAMM show they had in Chicago. Remember, they used to have that.
Yes.
Was that the summer show that they had in Chicago at McCormick Place or whatever,
right.
McCormick Center, whatever it's called. Yeah, that was crazy with Neil Sean and Larry London, and I double drummed.
Wow.
With BB and Ralph Armstrong, great bass player that played with Jean-Luc Ponty. Ralph's from Detroit. But I was playing Pearl at the time. That was my first drum endorsement, was Pearl. And so that again, man, you meet people at those, we met, first time I met, and played with BB King, and then, did some other dates. And all the other guys, Ralph Armstrong and Larry, became a very good friend of mine, man.
He was such a great drummer, Larry. Oh.
Yeah, great guy.
Wow.
Great guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting. So, yeah, over the years, man, just playing with different people. Rick Derringer played with us a lot with Edgar. So that was great, playing Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, with the guy that wrote it, Hang On Sloopy, he wrote that when he was like 13. That's incredible. Rick Derringer. He wrote Hang On Sloopy.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
No, I'm like in total surprise. The reason I brought up Pat Travers is because he's from Ottawa, where I grew up.
Okay. Yeah.
In Canada, right? And then he left for the States, and then the rest is history, of course.
Right.
It's all about like where what you end up doing. I mean, you're the master of your life, really. You decide to go there or not. Like he left town and did that. Others did not. Like you went to this place and you created your path, and you make those decisions based on what you see and where you want to see yourself, right?
Sure. Well, that was, that's one thing about writing my book, man. I had really not intended to, I never really thought about that when I was growing up or anything. But when I was at North Texas, Jim Hall really was the one that instigated me, to really, inspired me to write the book, because we were doing, I would go into my lesson and we were doing like reading and, big band stuff and reading stuff and different technical things too. And, around that time again, that was, I graduated East Carolina in 77, went to North Texas, 77 to 79, 2 years working on my master's. And at that time, that's when all that stuff was linear, GAD, Garibaldi, Tower of
Right.
Power, all that stuff. We were all listening to that stuff and learning these licks and stuff. And like I said, there's 3 buildings of practice rooms. You walk by one room and there's a guy that sounds like, Roy Haynes. You go by another room, there's a guy that sounds like Garibaldi. You go by another room, there's a guy that sounds like Elvin Jones. I mean, it's incredible. It was really crazy. And we were all woodshedding all this stuff. So I just kind of was drawn to that linear thing. And I would always come in my lesson, before the lesson would start, I'd say, "Hey, Jim, check this one out, man." And I'd play something like some kind of like a gaddish thing or something.
Right, right.
And this went on for a couple of years, So Jim said, "Man, and everybody, all the teachers and students and stuff said, you should, put that stuff in a book, And I did. So I never had any intention of this great thing happening, but man, it's been 43 years and it's been used all around the world and still used by major schools and stuff. So yeah, that was interesting, man, to write that book, when I was 25 years old. So
Wow, wow, beautiful.
it was really incredible, and I really was like, just I don't know, man, possessed almost to do that, because I wrote every note in there by hand. A lot of people
Right.
don't really realize that, but every note, there was no software at that time. I didn't have a computer, so there was. I wrote all that stuff by hand, man. So it's really crazy that it took a long time to do
Sure.
that. But I was really, like I said, possessed, man, and just that, sitting at my table with this ruler and these special pens and stuff. And man, it just came at the right time, it
Yeah.
just really hit at the right time. Just really, I'm still, very honored that the book was accepted so much. And thanks to people like Louis and Ed Shaughnessy and those people, again, that I had met earlier and, sent them the book. And, they gave great endorsements and recommendations and stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a good path, man. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, that was a good path.
That's fantastic
And
because it was
it was funny because I never, I had great teachers, but I never really considered myself a teacher or wanting to write a book or anything like that. I was a player, and a lot of people only know me kind of as a teacher, but man, I've played with a lot of people and done a lot of different things, in sessions and stuff when
sure.
living in LA and Europe as well. So it's really interesting that I went down that path, man, and I'm so thankful. It opened a lot of doors for
Sure.
sure.
Sure. No, and it's always these kinds of things that you don't really expect. I mean, your book, of course, the blue one and the yellow one. I mean, I think we bought like at least 100 copies, Rick, just so you know, because of the camps and all of that, and the workshops that we would do. We'd always have the books for everybody and our students, my own students included.
Right, right.
And when I wrote my book, I had, you don't have, it's such an undertaking. I never really thought about it, but only when I started doing the Cuba trips, that after a while, after a few years, I've been doing those for over 20 years. At one point, it was always these same questions that were being asked, and the guys down there who I knew quite well and would play with them, from Piloto to Changuito to all of these people, Oliver Valdez, would always look at me, or Adele Gonzalez, and it's always these questions, and I'm saying to myself, they're actually asking the wrong question. Never mind the answer. It's actually the wrong question. So I said, I have to do more than just facilitate this. I'm going to sit with them and I'm going to document and I'm going to write and create a methodology for us to understand what they're really saying. and where it's coming from. So it took me 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's the thing, Yeah, it does take a long time, and to
Yes.
be, to have it to where it really makes sense to other people. That's
Yes.
because
Yes.
maybe you think, we think, oh man, I think that way all the time, but to explain it to somebody else is
Exactly.
not that easy. And that was one thing about the funk book, my advanced funk studies, that it was just a lot of licks, really, just to show people what those licks were. There wasn't really a lot of concept in there or anything, but it did show a lot of licks, and it had transcriptions and stuff, which were great. And then I decided to write the solos in the back for people to use, like to utilize the licks, not
Right.
only learn the lick, but make it musical, like we
Right.
talked about earlier. So, in the second book, there's more of my kind of concept of how I come up with grooves and stuff like that in the blue book. But the yellow book, yeah, was just a bunch of licks, basically, but good licks, and licks that people wanted to learn at that time. So that's an interesting thing. But yeah, to put more thought into it,
Right.
to try to help other people understand what's happening. That's not always easy, and you've done that, with your book. So that's it's
Yeah.
it's an undertaking, like you said, man.
Oh yes, and then when we did the editing and all of that, I mean, it was Dave Black who helped me in the editing, and he would just laugh. Because he would send it back, and I'd see all these red marks, and
Right?
and I would say, "Really?"
Yeah,
So he would write, "Aren't you happy you're writing a book?"
yeah, 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 yeah.
He was great, but then I understood when I say undertaking, you've done it, what it
Well, yeah, it's
means.
got to be concise, and it's got to be in some kind of
Yes.
logical, chronology,
Yeah.
and that's one thing that, again, the book, I started with very simple exercises, and then you play grooves, and then you listen to the transcription, then you play solos. So it was, I didn't know if I was really thinking about the right thing at the right time, but I guess I did, and people still, like I said, it's still, used today, man. It's still
Yes.
fresh, that's another thing, to keep things around for a long time, like stick control, syncopation.
Yeah.
That's incredible when you can do something like that. And like I said, it's been 43 years now for it, man.
43
The book is
years.
still doing really great. I got a message from somebody in England today, a great buddy of mine I've known for a long time, and he's got his own import export, does some percussion stuff over there. And he just said, happy holidays. He said, man, your book is still doing really well in the UK. And I'm sure it is all over the world, but that's great to hear.
Yeah.
So when you can do something that helps people, that's a great thing. I mean, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. It wasn't that I thought that I knew so much, but I did have a good grasp of that stuff. And my teachers were telling me, man, you should put this in a book to, help other people learn this stuff. So
Yeah.
that's great, man. It's a great feeling, as to see your book in stores all around the world and stuff. So that's
Yeah.
it's
And
a it's a
people's
great accomplishment.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you're going around and you're able to explain it when you do you're performing still, but you're also in clinics or in situations where you can explain and go deeper and
Sure.
give. You think what were you thinking in that methodology, or what approach, so people can get to where they're going a little faster or a little deeper,
Sure, and that's
right?
different too. It's always great to study with the guy that wrote the book. That's another
Yes.
thing, because I see a lot of people playing stuff out of my book that's not, they're playing it, but it doesn't have the feel that it should have. So that's why a lot of people come. I get a lot of, like, one-offs, people that have used the book for years and years, and they, finally take a lesson with me or something, and another light bulb comes on,
Sure. Of
that
course. Of course.
that they were doing something that, you know not that you're doing it wrong, but with a different feel, or didn't have the right feel, or whatever. So yeah, I still love teaching now. I love that. I love doing clinics. I love gigging. like I told you before we started, I love living in hotels. I love traveling. I still love touring and doing all that stuff,
Yeah.
man. A lot of people think I only teach, but I still, I still do a lot of sessions for people. I do stuff here at the studio. I got my
Sure.
place, do a lot of tracks for people. So traveling as much as I can. Like I said, played with the trio in Europe last month a couple times, and always playing with this Mac Arnold, this blues guy here, man. We're working a lot. He works a lot. It's great. So
Nice, nice.
I like doing it all, man.
Well, it's a funny thing because once you've been doing it for so long, I mean, I grew up on the stage. I grew up playing drums. I cannot see myself having done anything else, and I didn't. This is my whole. Now I'm trying to figure out. I should
Yeah.
do something different so I can have something else to talk about because this is all I talk about ad nauseum sometimes. But the travel, the airplanes, the hotels, the stage coming back, and you have it, and it's like it's in your blood. I mean,
It's
how do you
great.
change
No,
that?
it's great, man. I love it. And I told my wife, when we met, I'm a drummer, not a plumber. You know, that's my best line ever, I think.
Yeah.
So if something happens around the house, I mean, I can fix some things, man, but I'll call a professional. I'm not going on the roof or anything like that.
Please don't.
And I mean, you can hurt yourself doing that stuff. Like
Yes.
I don't mind doing little things, but I'm more the artistic brain thing, man. I'm always thinking about something, or up here in the studio, or practicing, or thinking about doing, and now we have to do our own advertising, and Facebook and Instagram, and making ads and graphics and little movies, and all this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
you gotta, it's in your blood, like you said, man. It's all I
Sure.
do.
And you've been doing it all along now. I mean, we have the technology to be able to do it in a minute. Before
Great.
it was not such. I mean,
That's really great, man. That's great. I love the studio, man. I've got, like I said, I'm on my laptop here, but I've got a whole different setup and a whole different computer I use with 4 cameras and do all that when I'm teaching and filming stuff. So yeah, you have to have all that stuff. And I love the technology, man. I,
yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
You know, and you can spend your money. That's for sure, man.
Oh, for sure.
You can certainly do that.
It's incredible. But I mean, what it allows us to do, I mean,
Sure.
like yourself, you can be, I mean, I can teach from anywhere, whether I'm in Cuba or Italy or anywhere.
Exactly. No, exactly,
You're
man.
like
It's
you
great.
never
It's
left.
really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have students. I have some students in Asia and Europe, so, Australia, so
Yeah.
that's a great thing. That's a really great thing. And that's a great thing for students too, man, to be able to study with people that you
Sure.
may not have access to. So that is a great thing. This Zoom thing, man, is.
Unbelievable. What it was like it was meant to be. Like there was a point where things had to happen and had to change, and they did. Of course, some of
Yeah,
it
sure.
negative, but what also came out of it is also the challenge of staying relevant, staying alive with what you do. So you have to
Yeah.
learn, and I know. I mean, I've seen some of the things you do. Like when we did the thing in Italy, you quickly did this little ad thing, and I said, "Yeah, he's on it. I mean, he gets it." So your brain is still working.
Yeah, yeah, and I like doing it. I mean, I like doing it. You almost have to do it now.
Yes.
And I've got some people to help me with my website and stuff. I don't sit around and do that necessarily every day, but I try to keep it updated and things like that. So yeah, you have to do that now, especially now. Man, when we went to school and stuff, I mean, there was none of this kind of stuff, man. You
There was
just
no,
you know,
no phone.
I used to call Louis Belson and stuff, man, and he would pick up the phone. And I talked to Pearl Bailey, when he was married to Pearl.
Yes.
That was incredible, man. And that hardly ever happens now. I mean, people, and things have gotten crazy with the you know, people's personal information. I mean, you don't want to necessarily give everybody your phone number, but back then, man, when we were coming up,
Oh, yeah,
that's the way and wrote letters. I had letters from Louis and stuff. From Ed Shaughnessy and
sure.
Steve Gadd and guys. Funny,
Oh,
really funny,
oh
crazy
yeah,
stuff.
and every once in a while, I mean, I used to go see Buddy Rich a lot, and he used to leave my
Yeah,
name, and Pat LaBarbera used to leave my name
yeah,
and at the door,
yeah.
and
Great.
Buddy Rich once gave me his cases, so I own Buddy Rich's cases, the greatest drummer on earth, right?
Yeah, great.
Which one day for me they were cases, so I used them. So the cartridge company used that set for a session. So when I showed up, and guys were standing at the kit as they arrived, the other guys, and they're looking at the drums and waiting and waiting, and I show up,
Right. That's great.
and I said, okay, that's the last time I used those cases are gonna go in my museum.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. But that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
No, but
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, going to places where, like, when we wanted to study, like I would study in New York. Every
Sure.
month I would go down. So I met a lot of people. I hung around with Gad and watched the sessions. Alan Schwartzberg. I mean, a lot of guys. And that took energy. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a call.
Yeah,
I
sure.
mean, you were really
Yeah.
there, and for hours.
Man,
And
great. When I first moved to LA in 1980 from Dallas, I was living in Dallas after I left North Texas,
right.
and I lived there. Went on the road with I actually left North Texas, went on the road with an Elvis impersonator. So and lived in Vegas for a while. But anyway, man, the first time I went to LA, I went into Pro Drum. I mean, the first time when I moved there, went to Pro Drum for the first time, and Carlos Vega was in there, man. And Carlos, yeah, he's in my book. I had some transcriptions from, and he was so nice, man, and took me to a session that day. I mean, we just met. We were in Pro Drum, and he said, "Hey, man, come on, I'm going to Bill Schnee's studio, which is where Picaro and all those guys did all those great sessions." So, man,
Sure.
that was took me to my first recording session in LA, man. One of the first things that I did with a cat that I had known who he was but never met, and we met that day and became friends after that, man.
Yeah.
Terrible,
Oh, Carl, and he was a genius. He was a
great drummer
genius.
too, man. Incredible drummer.
Yeah, no, he's a real genius, and that kind
So
of thing.
things
I mean,
like that, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
yeah, things like that were incredible. Back then, when back in the day, man, you meet somebody, you talk to them, you call them, write them a letter,
yeah,
see them at a club, yeah,
and they would answer. I mean, I had a. That just reminds me, Ed Soph, because I got
yeah.
to know him at the Jamie Aebersold camps,
Sure,
the jazz
another
camps.
great player and teacher too,
Yes.
man. Ed's great.
And at one point, I had this one question about swing that I was really working hard on, and I would write to him, and he would write back, and it was incredible handwriting that Ed Soph has. Now, not only is he a great player, we became good friends, and he would write back and give me ideas. And at the time, he was living on the East Coast, and then after, he moved to North Texas, I believe. After that.
Yeah.
But he would write back these long letters of explaining. Wow.
Yeah.
Now you made me think of that. I was forgetting.
Yeah.
That's what they would do. And that's what we do. I know you would do that. And
Yeah.
we have this thing you have to share. If somebody asks you, I mean, just the fact that they're interested, it's
I remember
amazing.
one time, man, I think I posted it one time. I have a little screenshot of it. But in LA, I don't know, man. Computers. People were getting computers and stuff. I mean, this is the '80s. Late, '80s, middle '80s. But he sent me an email, man. I had an email like at AOL or something like that. I don't know. And I got this email from Ed Shaughnessy. We traded emails or something. And he wrote an email, that said, "Man, Rick, I gotta hand it to you, man. You're one hustling cat, man, with all this stuff you do on the internet." Because I was putting lessons on the internet when it first started. They were, really kind of, primitive, but I would post stuff when we could start uploading things to the internet. And
Nice.
it was great, man, to get an email from Ed Shaughnessy. I thought that was kind of cool. So, but he said, "I got to hand it to you, man. You're keeping all this stuff going." So
Which
it's
is what,
great, man. It's
which
great to keep
is,
in touch with guys like that too.
yeah. But I
Like you
mean,
said.
that's really interesting because, but that's what you have to do. You have to show up, right? You have
Yeah,
to be there. You have to do things,
yeah,
not for selfish motives, but because, of course, you're like building your house, but you're also out there giving all the time, and that never
sure.
stops. And you're curious all the time.
Yeah, yeah. You have to, like you said, stay relevant. Stay with what's happening now. And I feel like I'm playing as good today as I ever did, maybe better, in some ways, and I'm not saying that to, you know, blow my horn or anything, but I feel good, man. Playing good, and I still, again, don't mind moving my stuff around and, you know, schlepping. So,
Sure,
it's as long as I can do it, I'm going to
sure,
do it.
yeah,
I hope whenever the time comes, I die behind a drum set or something. So, you
wow.
know,
Yeah, but it's interesting because I remember one day I was doing something and the tech guy who was working with me starts picking up, and I said to myself, I can't just stand here and watch him. So I start picking up things and going up and down the stairs. And he says, Aldo, what are you doing? I said, I go to the gym and I pay for that.
yeah, yeah,
What is the difference? This feels really good. It means my arms are moving. I'm going up and down the stairs. So it's
sure,
like exercise. It's also, I mean, of course I'll hire you and you do it, but I want to be part of that too. I mean, you have to be careful, of course, but
yeah,
you're totally right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just don't have time, or you have to be careful so that nothing happens, because we do have
right,
a responsibility. But sometimes it's totally cool. I mean, we did it when we were just beginning, and now
exactly.
we pay to go to the gym. Um, this could be part of your training.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, man, because people talk about these companies make these light stands and aluminum stuff, and I don't even, I like big stuff, man. I like stuff that, I mean, I, even if I'm playing a small trio gig or something. I mean, I have smaller drum sets, but I like to use a cymbal stand that's not going to fall over and stuff. And not that I'm playing hard all the time, but I like, I don't mind, people talk about it's light, to carry. And hey, man, I've been carrying a big, heavy trap case my whole life. I'm not going to stop now, not because it's a little bit lighter, you know. So I don't have a problem with that, man.
Yeah,
It's all good.
that's nice. And now I mean, now you moved back to the East Coast because
Yeah.
I mean, you've been going for a couple of years now,
Yeah, yeah,
and
been back for 3 years now. I love it back here, but we still have a place in LA, so go back and forth still. But yeah, man, it was just after COVID, nobody knew what was going to happen, and California is so expensive,
yeah,
incredible. So, it's funny, man, that Jim Hall, my teacher, from North Texas, a great friend, his wife is a real estate agent. So, we've always kept in touch. And she said, after COVID, she said, it's a really good time, man, to buy some property here. So, and my wife and I were looking at, making some investment and doing after COVID, you never know
sure.
what's going to happen. And so, man, I came and looked at houses, and yeah, I'm from here originally. So I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. So I never had any intention of moving back, but yeah, moved back, got a beautiful place, and the studio's happening, and it's all good. And working, got the best gig I could have, man. Working with Mac, Mac Arnold. He played bass with Muddy Waters, and played with John Lee Hooker and stuff. Man, this guy is great. A real blues guy, man. He's the real deal, and it's a great band. And we played, almost 100 dates, in
Wow.
the every year for the last 3 years. So, I mean, that's the best gig I could have as far as working around here. There's a couple little gigs in town and stuff, but I mean, we play all around the East Coast, the South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, Tennessee. We played Buddy the guys in Chicago, so that's a good thing. So I'm liking it, and it's a little more relaxed and stuff. I mean, I miss certain things about LA, and I go back. I'll go back for the NAMM show all the time, and my wife comes back and forth. She's still has business there. She owns 2 businesses there, so she's hands on with her, Korean
Right.
family back there.
Right.
So that's all good. It's good, man.
Nice.
So yeah, I being in the South is cool. There's certain things about it. Some of the politics I don't really
Oh,
care
yes.
for
Well,
in the
yes.
South, but I won't get into that.
Yeah. Well, we play music. We don't play politics, and we
Yeah,
live
yeah,
longer because we're in our zone, and we make the world a better place from
yeah,
where we're standing.
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's nice because what we do is really universal, right? So
yeah. Exactly, man. Exactly. Yeah, it crosses all lines, man. Religion, politics,
yes,
music. Is good, man. Music is good for
it's a
everybody and good to everybody.
yeah, yeah.
So that's a great thing.
It's the greatest neutralizer and putting people on that same plane, and
Yeah,
there's no conflict. Music,
yeah. And if you can make people feel good with your music, that's an
yes,
even greater thing. I
yeah,
mean, it's a great neutralizer, like you said. It's great, man. It's just feel good. eh,
yep.
That's it. What's better?
Yeah, no, that's right. And we are so fortunate. I tell my students, we are so fortunate to be able to do this. No matter what age you start, doesn't matter if you're professional, it does not matter. The fact that you are studying this, that is part of your life now, you are in a completely different place now. Those of us who
Yeah.
do it for a living, of course, we're on a different plane. But now you're
Well,
in the zone. Now we understand the world on a different level. It's a happy place, right?
yeah, it's great. And when you start with music, I don't think, I never thought of this, when I first started, that any of this stuff would be happening. The more I got into it, the more of sure I hoped that it would happen and I would play with great artists and tour and stuff like that. But there's other people, man, that were incredible musicians when I was young that totally just got out of music, and I can't understand that, but it did happen with some people.
Sure.
So very fortunate to stay in it, to be in it, to be involved in music. It's the only thing, like you said, man. It's the only thing I do. My whole life is music, in
Yeah.
a good way, man. It's all. I feel great about it, but I'm always thinking about something new or some, some warm up exercise, something in my studio, some kind of, new sound or man, it's kind of crazy, but it's good.
Yeah, yeah, and it keeps you young. That's for sure. I mean, look at
Yeah,
you,
yeah. I think
Rick.
that's
I mean,
musicians are mostly, yeah, most musicians are pretty happy, man, and pretty healthy. They stick around for a long time. Seems like music is good for the soul too. I think
absolutely,
so.
absolutely. Anyway, we can go on for days, but I really want to thank you, Rick, for taking the time to talk about your journey and some of those great moments. I mean, we are so fortunate. That's all I have to say to do this, and the more of us, the better. That
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, man. You are as well, and you're spreading the word. Doing the great stuff you do with the Coast thing, and I'm not just saying that because we've been friends for a long time. And
Thank
we
you.
know a lot of the same people. And it is great, man, to be in this whole brotherhood kind of thing. And, just we'll keep doing it. That's all we can do,
Yep. Until we
and love
can't.
it.
Yes. All right. Well, you take care. And as I always say, to be continued.
Thank you, Aldo. Great to see you.
You too, man. Thank you.